Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. On November 13th, 1862, the officer pictured here, Chaplain Alonzo Hall Quint of the 2nd Massachusetts Infantry, life dates 1828 to 1896, wrote his first letter for publication in the Congregationalist newspaper since falling ill after the Battle of Antietam just weeks earlier. Written during his recuperation near Sharpsburg, Maryland, Chaplain Quint's illness and recovery brought him into contact with fellow wounded soldiers and stirred deep memories of fallen comrades. These difficult weeks of illness also brought into sharp focus his personal strain and disillusionment with political leadership and military missteps. Despite all of that, he found that his pride in the Union Army had actually deepened. The brutal combat at Antietam and the horrors of his aftermath seemed to stir in him a belief in the Army of the Potomac's capacity for ultimate victory and its willingness to pay a high price in blood. Central to Quint's reflection was the recent removal of Major General George B. McClellan from command of the Army. Quint struggled with the loss of the charismatic young leader, but Antietam helped Quint to understand that McClellan, Little Mac as he was popularly known, was but an individual, and that soldiers fight for their country, not for any one man. Quint's clear eyed understanding that success depends not on personalities, but on perseverance, unity, and an unwavering commitment to the cause. That's what makes a victory. I want to share a key passage of his letter, which an edited version of that letter appeared in his 1864 book titled The Potomac and the Rapidan Army Notes. The letter is datelined near Sharpsburg, Maryland, November 13th, 1862. Chaplain Quint writes, "Weeks have passed by since I wrote. I do not remember how many. I know that my last letter was written just after the awful day of Antietam by the dying bed of a heroic soldier, dying in Christian peace, the memory of whose friendship is forever sacred to me. Then followed a sick bed, with the nervous prostration and malarious fever which the Rappahannock campaign had originated. Then, as strength was gained, there were the meetings with wounded of our regiment at home, with convalescents, whose highest comfort was to drop into our recruiting office, with some not seen since Cedar Mountain earlier in 1862, whose grasp of hand was accompanied by starting tears as we remembered the gallant dead of that mournful day. Alas, for the weeping hearts which write the history of this war. If I ever appeared to write cheerlessly, I must say that I always have written as encouragingly as I could. There is first the wearing upon personal sympathies. There is, or was, next, the knowledge to be uttered only delicately of useless and needless disasters, of a lack of vigor where vigor was essential, and of opportunities wasted, of time, means, and men thrown away. I will tell you now that many a man in this army, and high stations and low, for months believed this war to be utterly hopeless, except as to the mere question of boundaries, and that men high, very high in civil life, have privately admitted the same opinion, and this not from the strength of the South, nor from any ability in the nation to restore its authority over every spot in its domain. Not that there is the least hesitation as to fighting on, but that there is a desire to fight usefully. I'm speaking now from a tolerably wide knowledge, not from speculation, nor from my own purpose. But I do not feel, I've never felt that the war is hopeless. I believe, on the contrary, that it never promised as well as now. We have a magnificent army. It is well led. It is brave. There is much loss yet to be had, but we can succeed. A winter campaign will destroy by death or disability one half of our numbers, But if the country wishes the attempt at that cost, the attempt can be made. I say this notwithstanding two facts which look to one or another, unpromising. These two are first, the result of the recent elections. They look as if the war was unpopular, but I do feel confident that while there are some double dyed traitors in the successful party, the great mass is truly loyal. They have voted against the administration because they meant to rebuke it. But I am more mistaken than ever before if that party as a whole does not demand a vigorous prosecution of the war. The second is the removal of General McClellan. Of course, the intimations that the army would not fight under anybody else are perfectly foolish. Our men fight for their country, not for a man. Yet while I cannot answer for any other corps than ours, in ours, there is a feeling of deep sadness at the loss of our beloved, our trusted leader. I have hardly yet seen the man who does not mourn over it, although ready to give his successor all their help. Indeed, the new commander is personally liked. I remember the cheers with which he was greeted the morning after the Battle of South Mountain, or how the cheers were doubled when General Burnside, that's Ambrose E. Burnside with his sideburns, after entirely passing the line, stopped to shake hands with a wounded soldier hobbling along on crutches. But we remember how General McClellan re inspired the shattered, despondent troops who were gathered in front of Washington, and by the magic of his name and presence, made an invincible army, who, instead of remaining in the fortifications, boldly assumed the offensive, who marched onward, waiting only to be sure of the enemy's plans, and marched to victory, who, against superior numbers, I say what is true, save the North at Antietam, who restored the wavering fight of the right wing, who infused life wherever he went, who ordered an advance, which he stopped only at the urgent request of commanders, who would not throw his brave men into a hasty advance and a winter campaign without suitable clothing. The soldiers remember these things, but they will follow directions of their leader. They will give all their powers to his successor. They will imitate the patience, the patriotism of their late general, who loves his country too well to make his personal position any cause for weakening that country's power. There has been much discussion as to whether McClellan ought to have attacked the next day after Antietam. I have never believed it was prudent, shattered as we were to risk it. We were terribly cut up. It is true that the rebels had to retreat across a ford, but that ford was a mile in extent and the water hardly knee deep. We had baffled an exultant foe and saved the North. Whether the army should have moved earlier after the rebel retreat is a question. If one knew how poorly provided it was, I think that the question would be answered. I remember that 5 weeks afterwards, our wagons went to the railway stations day after day for supplies, and unsuccessfully. I should not respect myself if I suppressed this old record of our sadness at the loss of our general. We loved him, but that love was not incompatible with the most ardent performance of duty, as the heroic record of the Potomac Army, and especially our own corps, will testify. The government has seen that that army was true and obedient. We respected the general, but we loved our country more. I ask, besides, that we remember that love for leader as a military man had nothing to do with political views. So there you have the perspective of Chaplain Alonzo Quint of the 2nd Massachusetts Infantry following his recovery after falling ill just after the Battle of Antietam, and how, while he recovered and met with friends and reminisced about those who were lost, deepened his own thoughts about how he felt, and that he appears to be sanguine for success, at least as indicated in this letter. But thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War research trail.